it's Chrissy here from the Creative Eclectic. I hope you're having a lovely day. Today we're doing a Tuesday tip and it's all about getting started with card making. So you may have received a beautiful handmade card and you've thought, okay, that's something that I think that I could do. Or maybe you have friends that have invited you to a Stampin' Up party or something like that, and you think, oh, this was really fun, it's something I'd like to really get into. So, where do you start? Well, today we're just starting with a few basic tools that you will help you when you're starting out stamping. So let's get started with the basic stationery items that you will need, and then we'll move into some of the more specific tools. Okay, first up, you're going to need, and it sounds a bit silly, you're going to need a ruler, a pencil, and a nice soft white eraser. Now, these are going to be your friends all the time, okay? And you'll also need, more than likely, some Post-it notes, or I've got a reel of Post-it tape. And that's really good for all sorts of applications when you're crafting. So they're for really basic household items that you're going to need. The other thing that you will find useful is some baby wipes. Make sure they're alcohol free, but make sure they're not fluffy sort of ones that leave fluff everywhere. They are great for cleaning stamps and things like that. So they're your really basic things. So if we move on from those, let's pop them there. Next thing that you're going to need is some, no matter what type of cards or papercraft you're going to do, you're going to need some really good scissors. Now, I have 2 pair of scissors that I use, and let's just move these over here. So I've got a pair of Stampin' Up paper snips, and these are nice and sharp, and I only use them for cutting paper. And I also have a pair of embroidery scissors. Well, they're a bit bigger than embroidery scissors, and these are my ribbon scissors, and I only ever use those to cut ribbon. They're a bit dirty at the moment. Okay, so we've got some scissors. The next thing you're going to think about is how you're going to stick your creations together. So there's a whole range of products that you could use. The things that I use regularly in my craft room is this Tombow Mono multi-purpose liquid glue. Now this has got a narrow and a wide end. It also can be repositionable. So if you put it on something and don't stick that piece of paper or whatever it is to another surface, it becomes tacky. And that's a really good thing to have. All right, so when you're crafting, you might decide that you want to use some paper tape or a tape runner. I use 2 of the Stampin' Up tape runners. One is a Seal, and it's a light blue colour, and I don't have the other one here. It's a Seal Plus, and it's a dark blue. They have slightly different applications. The Seal is for general card making. And the Seal Plus is for more robust things. The reason I really like the glue and the Seal is you've got some wriggle room. The tape is okay, and I think that it has its place, but I like to be able to move things around. The next thing that you might need are some adhesive foam. So what I use the Stampin' Up one. These are black ones. They have 3 different sizes. These are called dimensionals. And basically what they allow you to do is to add some depth to your creations. Now, you might use foam tape. Whatever you use in terms of your adhesive or your foam, you need to make sure that it's acid and lignin free. Now, what that means is when paper ages, if the glue that you use on it has acid or lignin in it, it makes it go, well, it eats away at the paper over time. So it might make it go yellow. There's a whole range of things that can happen if you don't use acid or lignin-free glue or tape or adhesive. So just keep that in mind. And I think that you use a lot of your glue and your adhesives. So invest in a good quality one, because you don't want your card or your creation falling apart. Okay, you want it to last. You've put a lot of effort and a lot of work into it, so you really need it to last for a bit more than 5 minutes. Okay, so the other thing that I use, and I use these all the time, and these are little glue dots, and I don't know if you can see, they're like a little adhesive sticky dot. Now I use bucket loads of these. These are great for attaching ribbons and embellishments and all sorts of things onto your card. Okay, so there are our basics. So you've got a liquid glue, a tape runner, a tape, some foam adhesive, and some glue dots. So all things that you will probably find as you will use as your creative journey progresses. Okay, so I'll just move those out the way. And now, what else do we need when we're making a card? I guess the next thing to talk about is cardstock. Now, there's so many different brands on the market that it's easy to be overwhelmed. So again, what you want to do is you want to find something that is acid and lignin free. So this means that it's photo safe, so it's not going to eat away at any photos that you have, and you can use it for scrapbooking, or you can use it for other things. Now I invest in a few different types of cardstock, and in my next video I'll show you how to cut your cardstock to get the best bases and out of it. Okay, but basically I use a Stampin' Up cardstock. This is a white. I always have a white in my stash. I also have a vanilla. This white Stampin' Up white also comes in a thick. I have a vanilla. This is a thick vanilla one. So this is when I want to use cards as bases, not a layer on a card. And then one of the most economical ways when you're just starting out is to get an assorted pack of cardstock. So I always use the Stampin' Up colours because they're all colour coordinated. So this pack here, you can see it's got 5 colours in it, and you get a couple of sheets of each colour. So that way you don't have, you haven't bought 20 sheets of a single colour, and it gives you a chance to, as you're developing and learning how you to stamp and playing with your colours, it gives you a chance to work out what colours that you really like and what you might like to buy more of. So I find, like with these colours, I've used this green a lot, but I haven't used reds as so much. So I always have some white, some vanilla, and some colours and some black in my stash. Okay, now use a good quality paper. Don't use photocopy paper. Don't scribble on it. You want something to last, and you need it to be good quality. And if you can afford to get something that you know that has a good reputation, so it's acid and lignin free, it is the same. This is the same colour all the way through. Some cardstocks, when you buy them and you tear them, they'll have a white core, whereas Stampin' Up cardstocks generally, or coloured cardstock, doesn't do that. Okay, so we're up to, we've covered some of the basic stationery things and household things you need, some the adhesives and the paper. So let's talk about cutting that paper. All right, you need a cutter. All right, so there's a few other tools. We're not talking about lots of big techniques, or like, we're just talking about basic card making. As you find out what you like and try new things, you can buy other things, but just stick to the basics. Don't buy too much all at once. Okay. Now I so I'm in Australia, so I have got a metric Stampin' Up trimmer. So this is a really great little tool because it's got an extendable arm. So if I buy a pack of 12-inch by 12-inch cardstock, which I don't need to, because generally when you buy, if you're in Australia, you buy an A4, or if you're in the US, you buy letter size paper. A card base is half the size, like half a sheet of cardstock, whether it be, so the US sizes are half a sheet of letter paper, size paper. Australian is half a sheet of A4, okay? So you don't necessarily, unless you're doing scrapbooking or something like that, you don't necessarily have to have 12 by 12 cardstock. And you probably find that you waste too much if you do. So this trimmer that I have, I'm just going to move these other things out of the way. It has an extendable arm. You'll see it's got a little piece here that you flip up, so you can just slip your paper underneath. It's got two blades. So, and these, let's move this up a bit. These just pop out. And of course it's not going to work today. And they just slide out. So you can refill. This is a cutting blade, the dark one. And it's quite sharp. So you can buy a replacement blade for that. And it just pops in to your track. And you just slide it to cut. Now the other blade that I have on my trimmer, which not all trimmers have them, and it's a scoring blade. So if we grab a piece of our thick vanilla cardstock, I'll just show you what that does. So you think vanilla cardstock, it's a bit heavier, so it's really great for card bases. Comes in a thick white as well, so what you do is I know that I want a card that's going to go like that and it's going to fold at the top. So I know that half my width of my paper is 10.5 centimetres. So I'm going to, I'll just move the light grey one out the way. I'm just going to use my dark browny grey one to cut onto. So then I know that if I fold that in half, that's going to give me my top folding card. So if I just tried to fold it in half like this, when it's a thicker cardstock, it runs the risk of creasing and not being a nice, crisp, clean fold. So what I want to do is I know that, excuse me, 14.9 is half the height of our cardstock. So I'm going to use my grey, light grey, and I'm just going to go back 3 times. And what you'll see is it's created a score. Now, then you just fold it, and see that doesn't buckle. Whereas if I try with this one and I just fold it, you see how the difference in the, this one's sort of got a puckered edge, whereas the other one doesn't. So that's why if you can find a paper trimmer that has a cutting blade, cutting and a scoring blade, it's a really great idea. It doesn't matter what brand. I use Stampin' Up because I'm a Stampin' Up demonstrator, but it really doesn't matter what brand you use. Use something that has got a good cutting blade that you can buy cutting refills. Now, this scoring blade, you don't have to ever replace it. It will be there forever, okay? So this one here, the other thing that you'll need in your kit is a bone folder. Now, what the bone folder allows you to do is allows you to get a really nice crisp edge when you don't have a scoring blade, okay? So it is nice and crisp, and it just makes things sit a bit better. You also can use this to curl paper, to curl ribbon, to smooth out paper that you're gluing to your base, okay? So it's a really, bone folder is an essential in the toolkits that people come to my classes. All right. So some people also, they like to have a little mini guillotine cutter, which is fine if you're just trimming off little pieces of paper, but you really need a good paper trimmer. This one here has a spot so you can hang it up if you've got a pegboard or something like that. And you just, from time to time, you just clean out that little track and give it a wipe over. And it's really quite a handy tool. And it's much easier than trying to cut a straight line with scissors, okay? Some people who run classes and stuff like that, they will have a big guillotine so they can cut lots of paper at once. But if you're just starting out in card making, you don't need that. You don't need that expense. Just go with the basics, all right? All right, so next up, so we've covered our paper, we've covered our cutter, we've covered our adhesive. Let's talk about some craft specific tools. So now I've got a silicone craft mat. This is really great for when you're gluing. So one of the things that you can do is you can put spots of glue on there, and when the glue dries you just peel it off. Okay, so if I wanted to stick something, say I've got a piece of let's say I've got a piece of ribbon that I want to stick to a piece of cardboard like that. All right, I want to stick that piece of ribbon behind my cardboard. Well, I've just put my glue on my mat and I'm just going to pop it on. So I always have a silicone craft mat on hand. If you can't find one, maybe use some baking paper. Not grease-proof paper, the baking paper that you shove in the oven under your slices and cakes and stuff. So, yeah. I'll just, most of the time I wouldn't use glue with ribbon. I would use my little glue dots, and because that's what happens, it comes off. So all I would do with my glue dot is, which leads to our next tool, which is what, a paper piercing tool or a picky tool. I use a Stampin' Up one, and it's got a little point on it, and so you can poke holes in things. You can lift your adhesive up and stick it down like that. Press that down like that. So so this take your pick tool is pretty cool, and the reason it's pretty cool is it's got a pokey end. You can then undo that, and it's got a sort of flat piece that you can lift up. That can lift up so little embellishments, like you can slide that under an embellishment like that and slide that onto your card. It's also got what they call a putty end. Now the putty end, mine's a bit manky. Now you could just buy a standard picking tool, but I like this one, and it's because it has got this putty end, and I can just press down on my embellishment and press it onto my card. I don't have to dig it up, okay? And I can move my embellishments and they don't go flinging all around the room, okay? The other thing that this tool comes with is a refill for your putty. So you just, mine's not ready to come out yet, but you would just twist that, and this, just twist that out, and then you can just replace it. And then at the other end, it also has what they call a Stylus Tool. Now, if you get your paper trimmer and you're unable to get one that has a, what they call a scoring blade, what you can do is you have got this little Stylus tool as part of your take the pick thing, and say for example you want to score a line from the end. So I've moved my cutting blade out of the way, just pretend the scoring blade isn't there. I've got my little Stylus tool, and I can just run that in the channel of my thing, and it creates a score line, which makes it easier to fold on. Okay, so that's what I use that for. And there's a thick and a thin one. So if you were trying to score pattern paper, so just the thin paper, I would use the thick end. If you were trying to score a cardstock, use the thin end. Okay, so that's a really great little attachment as part of this take your pick tool. So that's something I think something like that is an essential in my craft space. Okay. All right. So we've talked about cutting tools. To go with this tool here, you also would need a piercing mat. Now mine's very, very well used. And it's got all little holes in it. Now the reason it's got little holes in it is quite often when you're creating things, and you need this for two reasons, okay? Now this is just a foam mat, okay? It's a bit thicker than a standard mouse pad, right? But you need something like this. So for example, you've got your circle and you want to put a little piece of twine through it. You'd use your pointy end of your piercing tool and just make a little hole. Okay, and then you can thread your twine through it. Pretty simple. Okay, the other thing that you're going to use this for is when you are stamping. Now let's talk about the types of stamps that you can get. I'm talking about Stampin' Up stamps, and the principle is the same. So Stampin' Up has what they call a red rubber stamp. They call them cling stamps because they cling to a block. Now these red rubber stamps, they have got rubber, and then they have got a foam, and then when you've assemble them, you've got a sticker on the back. All right, the foam helps the rubber create a really crisp image. All right, so traditional stampers love red rubber stamps. All right, they're a little bit more expensive than the other option, which is, and I've got this one here. This is a photopolymer or a clear acrylic stamp. Now, when you're stamping with these, you'll notice that there is no foam between. So these will stick to a block, and we'll talk about the blocks in a minute. There's no foam between the stamp and the block, so you need that foam underneath your creation, underneath your cardstock, to get a really nice, crisp, clear image. It's not essential, but you will get much better results. Now, Stampin' Up has other foam mats, and this is, but I use my piercing tool because I use it for more than one thing, right? So let's just recap. You've got a couple of different types of stamps. You've got red rubber, and you have got photopolymer. Like there are other, most of the stamps that you will find that are attached to blocks will be, wooden blocks will be red rubber stamps. Okay, Stampin' Up doesn't sell those because, well, I think they sell background red rubber stamps, but generally because these, if they store it like this, it keeps, it saves a lot of room. So we've got our stamps. So the next thing you're going to need is a block or something to stick the stamp on. Right, now, there's a whole heap of different sizes and a heap of different brands. These are, these are Stampin' Up blocks. Now, see, they're well loved. This size here, which is a D block, I use this all the time. It's probably the most versatile size. You don't need every single one of those blocks. So I would use a D block. I probably would use this bigger block as well for my long stamps. And I also would have a small block. So probably, at the very least, when you're starting out, you need 3 to 4 blocks. But you don't have to buy them all at once. So what you do is when you get your stamp set, you look at the size of what your stamps are. So the Stampin' Up stamps, they always have pretty much the size on the outside. So I know that my D block will fit that image, all right? I know. So it might not fit that one, but it'll fit that one, okay? Worst comes to worst, there's a workaround you can do. So it'll fit all the sentiments, it'll fit. Okay, so D block is probably my go-to block, and it is for most professional card makers. Now, the reason I like these blocks is they've got a nice, they're clear, they've got a nice groove to help you hold them. There are other stamping tools, like people talk to you about Misju's and Stamparatus and all of that. Don't worry about that. Like, if you're just starting out, you don't want to spend a lot of money until you know that you absolutely love what you're doing. So just get a D block, and that's a really good starting point. And a lot of time you can get away with just 1 block. Okay, so we've talked about blocks, we've talked about stamps and cardstock and some of the basic tools. The other thing that you're going to need when you are creating is you're going to need some inks. So find a brand. I use Stampin' Up inks, all their colours, but I also have some really good basics in my collection. So I have a Memento ink, a black tuxedo Memento ink. That is my favourite black. I also have a StazOn ink. So this is a saddle brown. It comes in saddle brown and a black. It's a solvent-based ink. And it is, if you were going to do cards that have watercolouring on it, that's the ink that you would use. If you're going to use alcohol markers down the track, that's what you would use. The other ink I have is a watermark stamp pad, and so these are my 3 core inks. Like, a lot of the time when Stampin' Up sells kits, they'll have a little ink spot in their kit. So, but these are my 3 others that I use all the time. So the Versamark is good for creating tone-on-tone backgrounds. So you don't need to buy every colour ink if you've got a Versamark, okay? And they're also good for later on if you choose to explore heat embossing. Versamark was one of the first inks I bought. The other ink was, 2 inks I bought were Old Olive and Real Red, and the reason I bought those is because I was creating Christmas cards, and they were the best ones at the time. So the next thing, and the last most important things when you are stamping or creating cards is a way to clean these stamps, right? You invest a lot of money in your stamps, so what you want to do is make sure that you take care of them. So the first thing you'll need is some, a lot of people will tell you the first thing you need is baby wipes to wipe them. Now, baby wipes can dry out your rubber stamps, right? Let's talk firstly about your photopolymer stamps. So you care for the stamps in different ways. So photopolymer stamps, you can use really gentle dish soap and wash them with dish soap. Or you could get a, whoops, excuse me, I didn't mean to show you my head. You could get a stamping chamois. Now this chamois is like a bit like a car chamois. It dries nice and hard, and then when you wet it, And don't worry about it, takes on colour. So it's not a fluffy chamois, it's and basically that takes most of the colour off. And photopolymer stamps will stain. That's just what they do, they absorb colour, all right? So don't freak out if they stain, okay? So use your chamois to clean them, and every so often just some warm water and some mild dish soap will wash them and keep them nice and sticky so they stick to the block, okay? Now let's talk about rubber stamps, how you care for those. You don't want to put them in water. Okay, so remember before I said to you that rubber stamps have a layer of foam. Okay, this layer of foam, if it gets wet and it doesn't dry out properly, it can get mouldy and disgusting. So you don't want that, and you've just wrecked your stamp if you do that. So how you clean these is different depending on what inks you are using. So if I was using a solvent-based ink like my StazOn inks, so Jet Black or my Saddle Brown, firstly, I would wipe it with a baby wipe, and then I would use a StazOn cleaner. Now, just wipe that over the stamp. You're not really supposed to use StazOn with your photopolymer stamps, but then after I've cleaned off all the black or the brown or whatever, I would then use this product called a stamping mist. Now, this is a stamp cleaner. As well as cleaning it, it also conditions your stamps, right? So in conditioning your stamps, they're not going to dry out. It's a bit like when you go to the hairdresser and they wash your hair, they always condition it and they recommend do conditioning treatment. This is a similar thing. So when rubber gets old and dry, it gets brittle and it cracks. So you want to prevent that. So that's why you use a stamping mist. So, or a stamp conditioning cleaner. You can just spray it on. I have a, what they call a stamping scrub tool. Now this isn't essential, but it will make your life easy. But you can just spray it on and wipe it off with a piece of towel. So this has a wet side and a dry side. So you basically spray your stamp, rub it on your wet side, and then dry it off on your dry side. And you can pull these pieces out and wash them under the sink, under the warm water, and get any ink out, and just leave them to dry. So that's another really important part of stamping is your cleaning. So I hope you have enjoyed today's video about all the basics that you would need, and I look forward to our next video when we're going to be talking about the basics of cutting cardstock. Until next time, happy creating!